For most of human history, the average person had no idea what their own face looked like. A peasant in medieval Europe might catch a vague, dark impression of himself in a still pond, or in a piece of polished metal owned by a noble. He had never seen his face clearly. He could not tell you the exact shape of his nose. He could not see what other people saw when they looked at him. The clear, flat, accurate mirror, the kind in your bathroom right now, is a recent invention. It is younger than the United States. It was made possible by a chemical process that, for 2 centuries, killed almost everyone who made it. The story of the mirror is the story of self-awareness becoming a mass-produced product, and of the people who died slowly to deliver it. This is the 8,000-year history of the mirror, 6000 BC. The Obsidian Disc. In a Neolithic village called Çatalhöyük, in what is now southern Turkey, archaeologists found small discs of polished black volcanic glass buried with the dead. They were obsidian. The villagers had ground and polished each disc by hand for hours, possibly days. The reflection in a finished disc was dim, smoky, and slightly distorted, a dark version of the face suspended in black stone. These are the oldest known mirrors on Earth. They are roughly 8,000 years old. Almost all of them were found in graves. The people of Çatalhöyük did not, as far as we can tell, use mirrors for daily life. They used them for the dead. Whether to help the soul see its way to the afterlife, or to keep evil spirits out of the grave, or for some reason we will never know, they took the mirror with them. The first mirror in human history was a burial object. It was not for looking at yourself, it was for being looked at. 2500 BC. The Bronze Vanity. The Egyptians invented vanity. By the time of the pyramids, every wealthy Egyptian household owned a small bronze mirror, usually round, usually with an ankh-shaped handle. Bronze, when polished to a mirror finish, produced a yellow-orange reflection. Warm, slightly distorted, dim by modern standards, but unmistakably your own face. The Egyptians believed mirrors held part of the soul. A mirror was buried with its owner. A mirror was placed at the tomb's entrance. A mirror was a sacred and expensive object, and the most valuable thing in many women's possession. The Romans imported the technology and made it more practical. By 100 AD, wealthy Romans had small glass discs backed with thin lead foil. Early experiments with the modern principle, but tiny, dark, and unreliable. Pliny the Elder mentions them briefly as a curiosity. After the fall of Rome, the technology was forgotten. For the next 1,000 years, Europeans went back to polished metal. Almost no one outside the nobility ever saw their face clearly. 1500. The Venetian Secret. In the early 16th century, glassmakers on the island of Murano, off the coast of Venice, figured out something the Romans had not. If you laid a thin sheet of tin foil flat, poured a thin layer of liquid mercury over it, and pressed a sheet of clean glass down on top, the mercury would dissolve the tin into a silvery amalgam that bonded to the back of the glass. The result was a mirror, flat, bright, distortion-free, and roughly 10 times more reflective than any metal surface humans had ever made. For the first time in history, a person could see their own face in real, accurate detail. Venice realized immediately what it had. The Council of Ten, the city's intelligence service, declared the mirror-making process a state secret. The Murano glassmakers were forbidden from leaving the island. Their families were given subsidies and aristocratic privileges. Their daughters could marry Venetian noblemen. Any glassmaker who tried to defect was hunted, returned, or killed. The Venetian mirror monopoly lasted nearly 200 years. During that time, a single full-length Venetian mirror cost more than a full-rigged sailing ship. The Sun King decided this was unacceptable. 1684, the Hall of Mirrors. In the 1660s, Louis XIV's finance minister Jean-Baptiste Colbert hatched a plan. He would steal the secret of Venetian mirror-making and bring it to France. French agents identified 18 Murano glassmakers willing to defect for enough money. They were smuggled out one by one, hidden in cargo ships, ferried across the Alps, and installed in a new royal glassworks outside Paris. The Venetian Council of Ten responded the way it always did. 3 of the defectors died suddenly within months of arriving in France. One was found poisoned, another was stabbed in his bed. A third simply collapsed at dinner. But it was too late. The technology was out. By 1684, the French had built the Hall of Mirrors at Versailles, a single gallery, 240 feet long, lined floor to ceiling with 357 mercury silvered mirrors. It was the most expensive room ever built. Foreign ambassadors who entered it for the first time often staggered. They had never seen this much glass or this much reflected light in one place. The Hall of Mirrors was, in part, a political weapon. It said, France can do anything. France can make rooms out of light. Almost no one stopped to ask how the mirrors were made, or by whom. 1830. Mercury Madness. The men who made the mirrors were dying. Mercury silvering required a worker to stand over a flat tin sheet, hour after hour, pouring liquid mercury and pressing glass into the amalgam. The mercury evaporated as he worked. The vapors entered his lungs, his bloodstream, and eventually his brain. The first symptoms were small. The hands would tremble. Then the gums would bleed. Then the teeth would loosen and fall out. Then the worker would become irritable, paranoid, and prone to bursts of weeping and rage. By his 40s, he would be experiencing hallucinations, memory loss, and uncontrollable convulsions. This was mercury poisoning. It was the same disease that affected hatters who used mercury to felt hair into fur. The phrase mad as a hatter comes from this. So does the term the Danbury Shakes, named for the Connecticut hat-making town where workers staggered through the streets, trembling visibly by their late 30s. In the mirror trade, the disease was simply called the workshop's curse. By 1830, every mirror in every wealthy European home had been made by a man who had been slowly poisoned to make it. The cost of self-reflection was paid, almost entirely, by people who could not afford a mirror themselves. No one stopped buying them. 1835. The chemist who ended the slaughter. In 1835, a German chemist named Justus von Liebig published a paper describing a new process. If you dissolved silver nitrate in ammonia, added a sugar-reducing agent, and poured the solution over the back of a glass plate, the silver would precipitate out as a thin, perfectly reflective film. No mercury, no tin, no toxic vapors. The process took minutes instead of days. It worked in any factory with a chemistry bench. Liebig had ended the mirror-making slaughter almost by accident. He had been working on agricultural fertilizers. The mirror process was a side discovery he barely promoted. By 1850, every new mirror factory in Europe was using the silver nitrate method. By 1870, the mercury workshops were closed. The men who had spent their lives breathing mercury vapor either died or learned new trades if they could still hold a hammer. Mirrors became cheap. By 1900, almost every home in Europe and North America had at least one. For the first time in human history, looking at your own face became a normal, daily, unremarkable act. The 8,000-year project of seeing yourself was almost complete. 2010. A mirror in every pocket. In 2010, Apple released the iPhone 4. It was the first widely sold phone with a front-facing camera. Suddenly, every owner of a smartphone could see their own face on demand, not just in a static reflection, but in motion, in real time, in any lighting, in front of an audience. The camera became a mirror. The mirror became a stage. By 2020, the average person was photographing their own face roughly 20 times a week. The average teenager far more often. Most people now see their reflected face more often than the people around them do. The technology that killed the Murano glassmakers, that emptied the Hall of Mirrors of its political meaning, that ended in a sugar and silver solution invented by a German chemist who was thinking about something else. That technology is now contained inside a small piece of glass that almost everyone owns. 8,000 years from polished obsidian to the front-facing camera. The image is now perfect. The face on the screen is your face. Almost no one knows what the people who made the first clear mirror looked like. They were too busy dying. Thank you for watching. Every object has an origin. Click here for the next one.